Jasmine stepped off the elevator on the executive floor of Miller Technologies, checking her watch. It was 8:15 p.m. They were supposed to celebrate their 4th wedding anniversary at 7:30, but she had spent the last 6 hours stuck in the clean room, running the final stress tests on the new biotech alpha chip. She held the encrypted flash drive tight in her hand. It was done. The breakthrough her team had been working on for 3 years was finally complete. She couldn't wait to see the look on Julian's face when she handed him the missing piece to save their upcoming funding round. She pushed open the door to Julian's corner office, expecting to find him frantically wrapping up work. Instead, she saw Chloe Vance, Julian's newly hired personal assistant, sitting on the edge of Julian's mahogany desk. Chloe was leaning down, her laugh light and airy, while Julian's hand rested casually on her waist. On the coffee table stood a bottle of chilled Dom Perignon and 2 crystal flutes. Jasmine stopped in the doorway. The air in the room instantly turned cold. Julian looked up, completely unbothered. He didn't even pull his hand back from Chloe's waist. He checked his watch with a slight frown. "You're late, Jasmine," Julian said, his voice flat. "We had reservations at Lou Bernardine, but I had to cancel them because you couldn't pull yourself away from your test tubes." Chloe slid off the desk, adjusting her silk blouse with a modest smile. "Mrs. Miller, don't be mad at Julian. He was really stressed out about the investor presentation tomorrow. I just brought up some champagne to help him relax. I can leave if I'm interrupting." "Then leave," Jasmine said quietly. Her eyes were fixed on Julian. Chloe bit her lip and looked at Julian with wide, victimized eyes. Julian's face darkened instantly. "Chloe stays," he snapped, standing up and buttoning his suit jacket. "She's actually been doing her job tonight. While you were locked away in the lab playing scientist, Chloe was busy organizing the pitch deck for tomorrow's venture capitalists. She understands how this business actually runs." Jasmine let out a short, dry laugh. "Playing scientist? Julian, without my team in that lab, Miller Tech doesn't have a product to pitch tomorrow. I just spent 18 hours fixing the thermal runaway defect in the alpha architecture." Julian snorted, walking over to the bar cart to pour himself another drink. "Oh, please. You always overcomplicate things. It's just lines of code and silicon. Any junior engineer can do that. What matters is branding, investor relations, and vision, things you know nothing about. You spend all day in a lab coat looking like a tired graduate student, expecting me to bow down because you ran a simulation." Chloe stepped closer to Julian, resting a hand gently on his arm. "Julian, be nice. Jasmine works hard. Even if she doesn't really understand corporate strategy." Jasmine looked at Chloe's hand on Julian's sleeve, then up at her husband's cold, arrogant face. 4 years of marriage. 4 years of giving up her own academic prestige, working 80 hours a week behind the scenes to build his company from scratch, while he played the visionary CEO in custom suits. "Is that really how you see me, Julian?" Jasmine asked, her voice surprisingly steady. "I see things as they are," Julian said coldly. "And frankly, I'm tired of your rigid, antisocial attitude holding this company back. In fact, I signed off on a structural reorganization this afternoon." Jasmine froze. "What reorganization?" "Chloe is being promoted to vice president of operations," Julian announced casually. "Starting tomorrow, all technical department reports, including yours, will go through her. Furthermore, your admin access to the central server is being downgraded to read-only. I need someone market-oriented making the final calls on the alpha chip, not someone stuck in an ivory tower. You gave a secretarial hire with a communications degree oversight over my core architecture?" Jasmine stared at him in disbelief. "I gave the role to someone who knows how to listen to me," Julian corrected, taking a sip of his champagne. "Now, if you're done throwing a silent tantrum, go home. Chloe and I still have to review the slides for the board." Chloe gave Jasmine a sympathetic, victorious tilt of her head. "I promise I'll take good care of your department, Jasmine." Jasmine looked at Chloe. Then she looked at Julian. Without a word, Jasmine walked across the room. Slap. The sharp crack echoed off the glass walls of the office. Chloe's head snapped to the side, her hand flying to her bright red cheek as she let out a shriek of shock. "Jasmine! Are you insane?" Julian roared, lunging forward to grab Jasmine's wrist. Jasmine stepped back cleanly, dodging his grip. She reached into her leather handbag, pulled out a thick document wrapped in a blue folder, and slammed it onto the glass desk right next to the champagne bottle. On the cover page, in bold black ink, were the words, "Marriage Dissolution Agreement." Julian's eyes widened for a fraction of a second before his expression turned to disdain. What is this trash? It's my divorce papers, Jasmine said, her tone icy and devoid of any emotion. I signed my part 20 minutes ago. I'm waiving spousal support, and I'm walking away with zero equity in Miller Tech. You keep the company, the house, and the car. Julian paused, thrown off by her composure, then he laughed bitterly. Are you bluffing? You think you can scare me into giving you a bigger cut? You don't have a dime outside of what I give you, Jasmine. Your name isn't even on the deed to the house. Keep it all, Jasmine replied. She tossed the encrypted flash drive, the one containing the only working code for the alpha chip, directly into the trash can beside the desk. Julian didn't even notice the drive. He was too busy staring at her signature on the divorce papers. You're going to regret this by next week, Julian sneered, picking up a pen and signing his name with aggressive strokes. You think you're indispensable? Without Miller Technologies behind your name, you're just a glorified lab tech. Good luck finding a job in this city once I tell my network why you left. He threw the signed paper back at her. Get out. Jasmine picked up her copy of the signed agreement, zipped her bag, and looked at Julian one last time. Happy 4th anniversary, Julian, she said softly. She turned on her heel and walked out of the office, her heels clicking rhythmically against the marble floor, never once looking back. Down in the lobby of the Miller Technologies building, the torrential rain was pouring over the glass doors. Jasmine stood near the entrance, pulling her trench coat tight around herself. Her phone buzzed in her coat pocket. She pulled it out and saw the caller ID, Arthur Carter. She pressed answer and put the phone to her ear. Dad. Jasmine, sweetheart, a deep, dignified voice came through the line. Are you done playing house with that arrogant little boy yet? Jasmine let out a long, quiet breath. The tension that had held her shoulders tight for 4 years finally dissolved. Yes, Dad. It's over. I just handed him the signed papers. Good, Arthur Carter said, his tone instantly shifting from stern to immensely proud. That idiot never deserved you anyway. He has no idea who he was married to. The car is waiting for you outside. The car? Jasmine looked through the glass doors. A sleek, black-armored Maybach rolled up to the curb, flanked by 2 black SUVs. A young man in a tailored dark suit stepped out into the rain, holding a massive black umbrella. I've already cleared your security clearances, Arthur continued over the line. The president signed the appointment letter this morning. Dr. Jasmine Carter, your office at the National Academy of Sciences is fully prepped. Your team is waiting for you to lead the deep space biochip project. Thanks, Dad, Jasmine said, a faint, confident smile finally touching her lips. I'll be home soon. She hung up the phone, stepped out into the rain under the umbrella held by her driver, and climbed into the back of the Maybach. As the heavy car doors clicked shut, isolating her from the storm outside, Jasmine looked up at the top floor of the Miller Technologies tower. Julian thought he was the one running the show. He was about to find out what happens when the foundation is pulled out from under a house of cards. By 9 a.m. the following morning, Jasmine was sitting in the back of a black town car outside the municipal court building, holding her fresh divorce certificate. The process had been unnaturally fast. Arthur Carter's legal team had handled the paperwork in less than 12 hours. She stared at the piece of paper for a moment, then folded it neatly and placed it into her bag. Just like that, 4 years of marriage were wiped clean. As she stepped out onto the courthouse steps, her phone vibrated. It was a mass email notification sent to all tech industry executives and media outlets in the city. Subject: Official Statement, Departure of Jasmine Miller from Miller Technologies. Miller Technologies announces the termination of Jasmine Miller's employment, effective immediately, due to internal restructuring and performance misalignment. Mrs. Miller no longer represents Miller Tech in any capacity. Jasmine tapped her screen and opened LinkedIn. Julian hadn't stopped at a press release. He had used his connections to reach out to 3 major tech headhunters in Silicon Valley, subtly blacklisting her. One recruiter she had known for years had already sent her a cautious text. Jasmine, Julian's spreading word that you sabotaged a major project before leaving. Nobody's going to touch your resume right now. Jasmine let out a cold, amused breath. He really thinks he's ruining my life. Looking at trash on your phone so early in the morning? A smooth, deep voice broke her concentration. Jasmine looked up. Standing at the bottom of the courthouse steps was Ethan Rothschild. He wore a charcoal gray tailored suit with a dark silk tie, his silver cuff links catching the morning light. Behind him, 3 immaculate black Maybachs and a custom bulletproof SUV idling at the curb blocked half the street, their drivers standing at attention. "Ethan?" Jasmine blinked in surprise. "What are you doing here?" "Your dad mentioned you had some garbage to dump today," Ethan said, walking up the steps toward her. He reached out and casually took her heavy laptop bag from her hand. "I figured you might need a ride to somewhere that actually deserves your time." Before Jasmine could reply, a sharp horn honked nearby. A white Porsche 911 pulled up illegally in front of Ethan's motorcade. Julian stepped out of the driver's side, wearing a navy suit and looking triumphantly smug. Chloe stepped out of the passenger side, wearing a designer dress that Jasmine recognized as one Julian had bought with their joint account 2 months ago. Julian saw Jasmine and smirked, walking over with his hands in his pockets. "Well, look at that. Signed, sealed, and delivered. I see you didn't waste any time getting your hands on the final decree, Jasmine." "Julian," Jasmine said, her voice entirely flat. "You're blocking traffic." "I just came to make sure you actually signed the non-compete clause," Julian sneered. He then glanced at Ethan, eyeing his expensive suit and the luxury motorcade with a mixture of disdain and suspicion. "Who's this? Your new driver? Or did you hire a fake entourage to pretend you're doing fine?" Chloe giggled, leaning into Julian's shoulder. "Julian, be nice. Jasmine is probably just trying to keep her dignity. Although, Jasmine, I saw the press release Julian put out this morning. It's a shame about your reputation in the industry. If you need a reference for a low-level lab assistant job somewhere out of state, let me know. I can talk to HR for you." Ethan slowly turned his gaze toward Julian and Chloe. His expression didn't change, but the atmosphere around him dropped 20 degrees. "Who gave these two permission to breathe my air?" Ethan asked casually, looking at his head of security, who immediately stepped forward. Julian's face flushed red with anger. "Excuse me? Do you know who I am? I'm Julian Miller, CEO of Miller Technologies. We're launching the most advanced biotech chip on the market next month." "Oh, I know who you are," Ethan said, looking down at Julian as if he were a bug stuck to his shoe. "You're the idiot running a mid-tier startup on a burning credit line, using stolen patents you don't even know how to maintain." "Stolen?" Julian yelled, taking a step forward. "My ex-wife worked for me. Everything she made belongs to Miller Tech. And who the hell are you to talk down to me?" "Ethan Rothschild," Ethan replied calmly. Julian froze. His jaw went completely slack. "Rothschild? As in, Rothschild Capital Group?" Rothschild Capital was the largest private equity firm in the country, holding controlling stakes in half of Silicon Valley and controlling billions in government defense contracts. Julian had been begging their junior associates for a 5-minute pitch meeting for the last 6 months and hadn't even gotten past the front desk. Chloe's eyes widened, her fake smile instantly vanishing as she stared at Ethan in shock. Ethan ignored Julian's pale face, turning his back on him entirely. He opened the passenger door of the center Maybach for Jasmine, holding his hand over the door frame to protect her head. "Dr. Carter," Ethan said, intentionally using her maiden name and title. "The director of the National Science Foundation and the dean of the Research Institute are already waiting for you at the Capitol office. They're anxious to sign the $50 million grant for your new lab." Jasmine looked at Ethan, catching the subtle, affectionate smirk in his eyes. She smiled back. "Tell them I'll be there in 20 minutes. Julian snapped out of his shock, his voice cracking with panic. "Wait. Jasmine. Dr. Carter? What grant? What do you mean, Rothschild Capital?" Jasmine paused with one foot inside the car. She turned back and looked at Julian with pure pity. "Julian," she said calmly, "you kept telling me that branding and corporate connections were all that mattered. So let me give you one piece of advice for free." She leaned slightly closer, her voice cool and sharp. "When you pitched your company to investors, you told them Miller Tech owned the core algorithm for the alpha chip. But you forgot one little detail: the primary patent is registered under my maiden name, Jasmine Carter. And as of midnight last night, my lawyers filed a total revocation of your commercial license." Julian's face went completely ghost white. You can't do that." "I just did," Jasmine replied, stepping into the car. "Enjoy your pitch deck tomorrow, Julian. Let's see if Chloe can code a replacement in 12 hours. Ethan slammed the car door shut, shutting out Julian's panicked screams. He walked around to the other side, got in beside Jasmine, and tapped the partition glass. "Drive," Ethan commanded. As the Maybach fleet pulled away smoothly, leaving Julian and Chloe stranded on the curb in utter chaos, Ethan reached into his coat pocket and handed Jasmine a sleek velvet box. "What's this?" Jasmine asked, looking at him. "A congratulations gift for getting rid of 50 pounds of useless weight," Ethan said, his voice dropping into a soft, genuine warmth. "And a welcome back gift to the real world, Jasmine. I've waited 4 years for you to leave that loser." Jasmine opened the box. Inside lay an official gold-plated badge bearing the seal of the National Academy of Sciences, engraved with her name, Dr. Jasmine Carter, Lead Fellow. She looked up at Ethan, her eyes shining. "You helped Dad organize all of this, didn't you?" "I just gave him a ride," Ethan smiled faintly, leaning back against the leather seat. "The rest was all you. Now, ready to tear his world down?" Jasmine closed the box with a crisp snap. "With pleasure." 2 weeks after the divorce, Miller Technologies was in complete chaos. Inside the main conference room, Julian slammed a stack of papers onto the table, glaring at his engineering team. "What do you mean the system is completely unstable? We're supposed to demo the alpha chip to the board in 3 days." The lead engineer wiped sweat from his forehead. "Julian, the code on the server is corrupted. Half the core algorithms are missing key execution protocols. Every time we run a stress simulation, the chip overheats and shuts down." Julian turned his gaze to Chloe, who was sitting beside him in a designer blazer, looking visibly flustered. "Chloe, you assured me your table of engineers had full control over the architecture." "Julian, it's not my fault." Chloe stammered, her voice trembling. "My cousin said the files Jasmine left behind were just missing a few lines of code. We thought we could just bypass her safety protocols and patch it." "Well, your cousin is an idiot," Julian shouted, rubbing his temples in frustration. "Fix it. I don't care how many all-nighters you have to work. If we don't present a working prototype, the venture capitalists will pull their $30 million. Just then, the TV mounted on the conference room wall, which was playing a national news channel on mute, suddenly flashed a live broadcast banner: National Science Foundation Academy of Sciences Joint Press Conference. An engineer pointed at the screen. "Hey, turn the sound up." Julian frowned and grabbed the remote, unmuting the channel. On the screen, a grand podium stood inside the National Auditorium in Washington, D.C. Arrayed in front of hundreds of journalists and government officials were world-renowned scientists and corporate titans. Sitting in the center of the front row was Ethan Rothschild, looking effortlessly powerful. The host stepped up to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we mark a historic milestone in national biotech innovation. Please welcome the newly appointed Chief Scientist of the National Biochip Initiative, and the youngest inducted Fellow of the National Academy of Sciences." The camera zoomed in as Jasmine stepped up to the podium. She wore an immaculate ivory suit, her hair styled with sharp, regal elegance. Her calm, commanding presence filled the entire screen. In the Miller Tech conference room, absolute silence fell. Julian's mouth dropped open. The remote slipped from his hand, clattering onto the floor. "Jasmine." Chloe stared at the screen, her face turning pale. That's impossible. She was just a lab technician." On the TV screen, Jasmine adjusted the microphone and spoke into the cameras with absolute composure. "Thank you, Director." Jasmine's voice echoed through the speakers, loud and clear. "Over the past 3 years, my primary research focused on thermal stability in advanced biosilicon chips. Today, under the sponsorship of the Rothschild Capital Group and the National Science Foundation, my team has successfully deployed the next-generation Genesis architecture. All patents for this technology have been officially secured under my name, Dr. Jasmine Carter." A reporter held up a microphone. "Dr. Carter, rumors suggest a mid-sized tech company, Miller Technologies, claimed to own a similar architecture. Can you comment on their upcoming product launch?" Jasmine looked directly into the camera lens, a faint, icy smile playing on her lips. "The architecture Miller Tech claims to hold is an obsolete, highly unstable draft that I personally abandoned due to critical safety flaws," Jasmine said calmly. "Furthermore, as of 2 weeks ago, all commercial authorization granted to Miller Technologies has been legally revoked. Any attempt to commercialize or demo that code will result in immediate federal patent infringement prosecution." The press room exploded into a flurry of camera flashes and shouting journalists. Back in the Miller Tech conference room, the engineers turned to look at Julian in utter panic. "Julian, is she talking about our alpha chip?" One senior engineer yelled. "Did you build our entire product line on abandoned, unauthorized code?" Before Julian could answer, his phone began ringing frantically. Then another phone rang. Within 10 seconds, every phone in the room was blaring. Julian picked up his phone with shaking hands. "Hello? Mr. Vance?" "Julian, you bastard." The investor screamed through the speaker so loudly that everyone in the room heard it. "Are you watching the news? Rothschild Capital just blacklisted your company. The board is pulling our $30 million investment immediately. We are suing you for fraud." "Wait. Mr. Vance, listen to me. I can explain," Julian pleaded, but the line went dead. Chloe grabbed Julian's arm, her voice hysterical. "Julian, what do we do? My cousin put all our company reserves into manufacturing those prototype chips based on that draft." Julian pushed her away violently. "Get away from me. This is all your fault. You told me you could handle her department." "My fault?" Chloe shrieked. "You're the CEO. You're the one who signed off on firing her." While they screamed at each other, Julian's screen flashed with a new notification. It was a formal summons from the federal patent court, followed by a notice from the bank: Miller Technologies accounts frozen pending legal investigation. Julian fell back into his chair, staring at the TV screen in sheer terror. On the broadcast, the press conference had ended, and the camera caught a brief, candid moment. Ethan Rothschild walked up to Jasmine, casually handing her a glass of water, his eyes filled with gentle admiration as he whispered something in her ear that made her laugh softly. Julian's heart twisted with a sudden, violent pang of regret and agony. The woman he had discarded like trash was now standing at the very top of the world, protected by the most powerful man in the industry. And the company he had sacrificed everything for was crumbling into dust right before his eyes. The collapse of Miller Technologies didn't take weeks, it took less than 48 hours. Inside Julian's corner office, papers and empty coffee cups littered the desk. The sleek, modern room now felt like a war zone. Down the hall, the quiet hum of busy employees was gone, replaced by the chaotic noise of staff frantically packing their desk items into cardboard boxes. The door flew open, and Chloe's cousin, Marcus, sprinted into the room, his face pale and sweating profusely. "Julian, we have a massive problem," Marcus yelled, slamming his tablet onto the desk. "The main server just wiped. All the raw simulation data for the Alpha project is gone." Julian jumped out of his chair, grabbing Marcus by the collar. "What do you mean, gone? That's the only backup we had left." "I tried to run a forced bypass on the safety block Jasmine left behind," Marcus stammered, shaking in Julian's grip. "I thought I could override her encryption using a brute force script. But her code had a self-destruct trigger. The moment the system detected unauthorized modification, it wiped the database and locked us out permanently." Julian shoved Marcus backward, sending him stumbling into a bookshelf. "You idiot. I paid you 50 grand to manage that server. You told me you were better than Jasmine." "Julian, calm down." Chloe stepped in, her voice shrill as she tried to pull Julian back. "Marcus was just trying to help. It's Jasmine's fault. She set a trap for us. She intentionally sabotaged the company before she left." "Sabotaged us?" Julian whirled around on Chloe, his eyes bloodshot with rage. "She didn't sabotage anything. She set standard security protocols on her own patents. You and your incompetent cousin are the ones who thought you could steal her work without knowing how it operated." Chloe stepped back, shocked by his tone. "How can you take her side? I'm the one who stayed by your side. I did everything for you. You did everything for my money." Julian snarled, his voice echoing through the glass walls. "You talked me into freezing her access. You convinced me she was easily replaceable. And what did you give me in return? You destroyed 3 years of work in 2 weeks." Before Chloe could scream back, the office door swung open again. 2 men in dark suits holding leather briefcases walked in, followed by 4 armed county sheriffs. "Julian Miller?" the lead man asked, pulling an official badge from his coat. "I'm Agent Brooks from the Securities and Exchange Commission. We have a federal warrant for the seizure of all financial and digital assets belonging to Miller Technologies." Julian's breath hitched. "SEC? On what grounds?" "Fraud, misrepresentation of technical assets to venture investors, and willful patent infringement," Agent Brooks said coldly, gesturing for the sheriffs to secure the computers. "Your investors filed a joint criminal complaint this morning. Furthermore, your primary bank has officially recalled your $20 million credit line. Effective immediately, Miller Technologies is entering forced liquidation." "No. No, wait. Give me 24 hours. Julian pleaded, his composure completely shattering. "I can fix this. I can call Jasmine, she'll give me the access code. Save it for the judge, Mr. Miller, the agent replied. Chloe panicked, backing toward the door with her designer handbag. This has nothing to do with me. I'm just an administrative assistant. I resigned 10 minutes ago. Miss Vance? A second investigator stepped into her path, holding up a file. We have internal email records showing you signed off on the transfer of $3 million from the company's RD account into a private shell company registered under your cousin's name last night. You're coming with us for questioning regarding corporate embezzlement. Chloe's face turned paper white. Julian. Help me. Tell them I didn't do it. Julian didn't even look at her. He sank into his chair, staring blankly as the sheriff slapped handcuffs on Marcus and led Chloe away, her frantic crying fading down the hallway. He was completely alone. He looked at the empty frame on his desk where a picture of Jasmine used to sit, a picture he had thrown in the trash the day Chloe moved into the office. Every single milestone Miller Tech had ever achieved was built on Jasmine's brilliance. She had worked 16 hours a day in silence, letting him take all the credit, all the spotlight, and all the glory. And he had traded her away for a gold digger who couldn't even read a schematic. Julian looked at his phone. He dialed Jasmine's number, but the call immediately went to an automated voice. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. His hands shook as he grabbed his coat and car keys. He didn't care about the SEC warrant. He didn't care about the reporters outside. He had to find her. He had to make her understand that he was wrong. He sprinted out of the office and headed straight for the one place he knew she might still go, the Carter family estate. A torrential downpour hit the city, heavy rain hammering against the iron gates of the Carter estate. Julian scrambled out of his car, completely soaking his suit within seconds. Behind him, Chloe was clinging to his jacket, her makeup smeared and tears mixing with the rain. After being released on bail, she had tracked Julian down, desperate for him to use his last remaining funds to cover her legal fees. Julian ignored her, pounding frantically on the heavy mahogany gates of the estate. Jasmine! Jasmine, please come out. Julian screamed into the storm, his voice hoarse. I know you're in there. Just give me 5 minutes. I was wrong, Jasmine. Please. Chloe pulled at his arm, shivering violently. Julian, stop it. This is embarrassing. They aren't going to open the door. Just give me the money from my lawyer first. Shut up. Julian shoved her onto the wet driveway, his eyes wild. If Jasmine doesn't help us, we're both going to federal prison. You brought this on us with your greed. Before Chloe could scream back, the massive iron gates hummed to life and slowly swung open. Julian's eyes lit up with desperate hope. He rushed forward onto the cobblestone driveway. Jasmine. I knew you'd. He stopped dead in his tracks. Walking out from the main porch under a wide black umbrella wasn't Jasmine. It was Arthur Carter, the world-renowned chairman of the National Science Council, flanked by 4 towering security guards in tactical gear. Arthur stopped a few feet away, looking down at Julian with a cold, disgusted sneer. What kind of stray dog is barking in front of my house this late at night? Arthur's voice boomed over the sound of the thunder. Julian flinched, but he quickly forced a pleading, pathetic smile. Mr. Carter. Sir. I'm Julian, Jasmine's husband. There's been a huge misunderstanding. Jasmine set up a technical lock on my company's servers before she left. It was just a marital spat. Please tell her to lift the block, or Miller Tech is going to go bankrupt. Marital spat? Arthur let out a sharp, mocking laugh. You kicked my daughter out of her own lab for a secretary. You signed divorce papers and put out a press release trying to destroy her career in this city. And now you call it a marital spat because your stolen code exploded in your face? Chloe scrambled to her feet, trying to put on a helpless act. Sir, you don't understand. Jasmine frame. Silence, you cheap grifter, Arthur snapped, his eyes cutting through Chloe like steel. You think my family doesn't know every dirty penny you embezzled from my daughter's research fund? Julian dropped to his knees right there in the mud, grabbing the hem of Arthur's trousers. Mr. Carter, please. I'm begging you. I love Jasmine. I still love her. Just let me see her for 1 minute. I'll give her 50%, no, 80% of the company. Arthur kicked his foot back, dislodging Julian's grip as if brushing off dirt. 80% of a bankrupt shell under federal investigation? Arthur laughed coldly. Julian, you really are as ignorant as you are arrogant. You thought my daughter was just a little lab assistant who depended on your charity? Arthur stepped aside, pointing toward the estate's grand stone pillars. My daughter was appointed chief scientist of the National Academy of Sciences last month, Arthur announced, his voice filled with overwhelming pride and authority. She doesn't just hold the patents to your entire product line, she controls the federal research grants that keep half the tech firms in Silicon Valley alive. You are nothing to her. You were never anything to her. Julian froze on his knees, his face turning entirely ghostly white as the truth finally hit him like a physical blow. The prestigious family background, the academic power, the infinite resources, Jasmine had possessed all of it from the very beginning. She had lived humbly with him for 4 years simply because she loved him, and he had thrown her away like trash. A pair of bright headlights cut through the heavy rain. A sleek, armored Maybach pulled up smoothly beside Arthur. The rear door opened. Ethan Rothschild stepped out into the rain, holding a large black umbrella. He wore a dark wool coat, looking effortlessly regal and commanding. Ethan didn't even spare a glance at Chloe, who shrank back in terror. He walked over, stopped beside Julian, and looked down at the man kneeling in the mud. "You're making a mess on the driveway, Miller," Ethan said calmly, his tone completely flat. "Rothschild." Julian gasped, looking up with bloodshot, desperate eyes. "Did you do this? Did you turn Jasmine against me?" Ethan bent down slightly, his expression terrifyingly cold. "Jasmine never belonged to you. You were just a mistake," she corrected. "And if you ever step foot within a mile of her again, I won't just liquidate your company, I'll make sure you spend the next 20 years behind bars." Before Julian could answer, Ethan turned his back on him, walking toward the passenger side of the Maybach. Inside the warm, dry cabin of the car, Jasmine lowered the tinted window an inch. Her eyes met Julian's through the rain. There was no hatred in her gaze, no anger, and no regret, only absolute, icy indifference. "Jasmine. Jasmine, please." Julian screamed, trying to crawl toward the car. The security guards instantly stepped forward, pinning Julian and Chloe to the wet pavement. Jasmine rolled the window back up, shutting out his voice completely. Ethan climbed into the seat beside her, wrapping a warm jacket around her shoulders as the Maybach pulled smoothly into the estate, the heavy iron gates slamming shut behind them, locking Julian out in the freezing storm forever. 2 weeks after the incident in the rain, Julian was living in a cheap motel on the outskirts of the city. His bank accounts were frozen, his assets seized, and his name was toxic in every executive circle. Yet, he refused to give up. He spent his remaining cash buying a cheap suit and a single bouquet of Jasmine's favorite white lilies. He tracked down the schedule for the annual American Biotech Summit, the biggest tech convention of the year, knowing Jasmine would be the keynote speaker. Inside the grand ballroom of the convention center, hundreds of investors, scientists, and journalists sat in packed rows. When Jasmine stepped onto the stage, dressed in an elegant charcoal suit, the room erupted into applause. She delivered her speech on the future of neural interface chips with sharp precision, effortlessly taking complex questions from the audience. As the Q&A session wrapped up and Jasmine walked off the stage toward the VIP lounge, a figure burst past the security rope. "Jasmine. Please, just hear me out." Julian rushed forward, disheveled and pale, holding out the wilted lilies. 2 security guards instantly intercepted him, pinning his arms behind his back. "Wait. Don't hurt him." Jasmine stopped, turning around. She gestured for the guards to hold him in place rather than tackle him to the floor. Julian breathed heavily, looking at her with frantic, bloodshot eyes. "Jasmine. Look, I brought white lilies. Your favorite. Remember our first anniversary when I couldn't afford a gift and bought you these from a street vendor?" Jasmine looked at the flowers, then met his gaze. Her expression was completely unbothered. "Julian. That was 6 years ago. I don't even like lilies anymore." "Jasmine, I know I was a fool," Julian stammered, tears welling up in his eyes as he tried to take a step closer. "Chloe lied to me. She manipulated me. I never stopped loving you. Every night in that terrible motel room, all I think about is us working side by side in that tiny garage lab when we started Miller Tech. We were a team. We can be that again. I'll do whatever you want, I'll work as your junior assistant." Several reporters turned their cameras toward the commotion, flashes snapping rapidly. Jasmine walked slowly toward him, her heels echoing against the polished floor. She looked down at his trembling form, her voice cool and clear enough for every microphone nearby to pick up. "Julian, stop humiliating yourself," she said quietly. "You didn't realize you loved me when Chloe took my seat in your office. You didn't love me when you revoked my server access, or when you put out a press release trying to blackball me from the industry. I was blind." Julian sobbed, dropping to his knees right in front of the cameras. "I'm begging you, Jasmine. Give me one more chance. I'm kneeling in front of the whole world." "You're not kneeling because you love me, Julian," Jasmine replied coldly, looking down at him without a trace of pity. "You're kneeling because your money is gone, your status is gone, and you realized you can't survive without the brain you took for granted. Your love is just desperate, cheap regret." Before Julian could scream out another plea, a heavy hand rested gently on Jasmine's shoulder. Ethan stepped up beside her, his tall frame instantly casting a shadow over Julian. He didn't even look down at the man on his knees. Instead, Ethan pulled a dark velvet ring box from his pocket and casually handed it to Jasmine. "The board just approved the final acquisition terms," Ethan announced smoothly, his deep voice carrying across the quiet room. "Rothschild Capital bought out all remaining debt and assets of Miller Technologies this morning for pennies on the dollar." Julian gasped, staring up in horror. You bought my company?" "Correction," Ethan said, finally glancing down at Julian with pure arrogance. "I bought the carcass of your company and transferred 100% of the ownership rights directly to Dr. Jasmine Carter. She now owns your former office, your patents, and even the chair you sat in." Jasmine took the box, a slight, victorious smirk appearing on her face. "Thanks, Ethan." "Jasmine, no!" Julian cried out, reaching for her dress. Ethan stepped in front of Jasmine, blocking Julian completely. "Get this trash out of my sight," Ethan commanded the security guards. "Yes, Mr. Rothschild." The security team dragged Julian backward across the floor as he kicked and screamed her name, his voice growing fainter until the heavy double doors slammed shut. Ethan turned back to Jasmine, his cold demeanor instantly melting into a soft, affectionate look. "Did he bother you?" "Not at all," Jasmine smiled, looking up at him. "He actually reminded me how much better my life is now." Ethan chuckled, stepping closer and gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Good. Because the private jet leaves in 2 hours, and your father is waiting to celebrate your patent launch in D.C. "Then let's not keep him waiting," Jasmine said, sliding her arm into Ethan's as they walked past the flashing cameras together. 3 weeks after the summit, the legal storm reached its climax inside the federal courthouse in downtown D.C. Chloe, facing a decades-long prison sentence for corporate embezzlement and fraud, decided to launch a desperate retaliation. Funded by a shifty corporate competitor, her defense lawyer filed a countersuit against Jasmine, claiming she had illegally transferred proprietary code from Miller Tech to Rothschild Capital before her resignation. The courtroom was packed with press, legal analysts, and industry executives. Chloe sat at the defense table, her hair styled and makeup done in a pathetic attempt to look helpless and innocent. Julian sat behind her in the gallery, wearing a faded suit, serving as a material witness for the prosecution. "Your Honor," Chloe's defense attorney declared, standing up confidently. "We have clear evidence that Dr. Jasmine Carter systematically stripped Miller Technologies of its core intellectual property while still employed as Chief Technology Officer. She deliberately left behind corrupt files, causing tens of millions of dollars in losses to my client and Mr. Julian Miller." The judge looked over his glasses at Jasmine, who sat calmly beside her lead attorney and Ethan. "Dr. Carter, how do you respond to these allegations?" Jasmine stood up, buttoning her white suit jacket. She walked over to the podium, entirely unfazed. "Your Honor, the prosecution's claim is built on a complete ignorance of how software architecture works," Jasmine said, her voice echoing clearly throughout the courtroom. "With the court's permission, I would like to submit Exhibit A into evidence." Jasmine tapped her tablet, and the large monitors in the courtroom lit up with time-stamped server logs and patent registry records. "This is the master commit log from the federal patent server," Jasmine explained, pointing to the screen. "As you can see, the core algorithm for the Genesis chip was registered under my maiden name, Jasmine Carter, 5 years ago, a full year before Miller Technologies was even incorporated." Chloe's attorney blinked, suddenly looking nervous. "Your Honor, even if the patent is under her name, she used Miller Tech's server infrastructure to refine it." "Did I?" Jasmine smiled faintly, pulling up a second document. "This is the financial audit of Miller Technology servers for the past 4 years. Every single gigabyte of storage space, every server cluster, and every piece of lab equipment I used was paid for out of my personal trust fund, managed by the Carter family estate. Miller Tech didn't spend a single dime on my R&D." A whisper swept through the gallery. Julian slumped in his seat, hiding his face in his hands. He hadn't paid for her lab, he had just taken the credit. Furthermore, Jasmine continued, her tone turning icy sharp as she looked directly at Chloe, regarding the corrupted files Miss Vance mentioned. I didn't destroy those servers. Miss Vance's cousin attempted to brute force enter my encrypted personal partition using stolen admin credentials at 2 a.m. on the 14th. My security system automatically initiated a standard protocol sweep. Jasmine submitted a final audio file. She pressed play. Chloe's voice erupted through the courtroom speakers, crystal clear. Just break into her private folder. Julian said she left the company, so everything in that drive belongs to us now. Nobody will ever know we didn't write it. The courtroom erupted into instant chaos. Chloe slammed her hands on the table, screaming hysterically. That's a trap. She recorded me. That's illegal. Quiet in the court. The judge banged his gavel repeatedly. Order in the court. When the room finally fell silent, the judge looked down at Chloe and her lawyer with severe disgust. The court finds the defense's countersuit completely frivolous and malicious, the judge ruled firmly. All charges against Dr. Jasmine Carter are dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, based on the audio and digital evidence presented today, I am referring Miss Chloe Vance and her accomplice for immediate indictment on charges of federal wire fraud, attempted theft of trade secrets, and perjury. 2 federal marshals stepped forward, instantly slapping handcuffs onto Chloe's wrists. No. Julian, do something. Help me. Chloe shrieked as she was forcibly dragged out of the courtroom, her heels dragging against the floor. Julian didn't move. He sat frozen in the gallery, his face pale as death. As the gallery cleared out, Julian slowly stood up, trying to approach Jasmine as she packed her files. Jasmine. Julian whispered, his voice trembling. It was all her. She tricked me. I didn't know she tried to steal your private drive. Ethan stepped between them, his tall, imposing figure completely blocking Julian's view of Jasmine. You knew, Julian, Ethan said, his voice dropping into a dangerous, low whisper. You just didn't care as long as you thought you could profit off her work. And now, the bankruptcy court has officially finalized the personal liability judgment against you. You owe $18 million to your former investors. Julian's eyes went wide. $18 million? I don't have $1,800. Then I suggest you get a job, Ethan said coldly. Because if you miss a single payment, my legal team will personally file for your criminal asset seizure. Jasmine walked past Julian without saying a single word, taking Ethan's arm. Julian watched them walk out of the courthouse together into a swarm of cheering press, knowing that his life was completely ruined, while Jasmine was stepping into a world he could never touch again. In a cramped, roach-infested studio apartment on the dark edge of the city, Julian sat on a broken couch. The room smelled of cheap takeout and stale beer. On the tiny, flickering television screen mounted on the wall, a global broadcast was playing live, the International Lasker Science Technology Awards Gala. The camera panned across a grand ballroom filled with world leaders, Nobel laureates, and billionaire philanthropists. Sitting at the head table in a stunning emerald green gown was Jasmine, glowing with poise and quiet confidence. Beside her sat Ethan Rothschild, looking effortlessly distinguished as he held her hand under the table, whispering something that made her laugh softly. Julian's hands trembled as he clutched a lukewarm beer can. His phone on the table lit up with a final collection notice. Final notice, eviction proceedings initiated. He had nothing left. His car was repossessed, his bank accounts were drained to zero, and Chloe was currently serving a 12-year sentence in federal prison. On the television, the host stepped up to the main podium. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the host announced, his voice echoing across the global broadcast, for her groundbreaking achievements in neural interface biochips that have revolutionized modern medicine, please welcome our highest laureate of the year, Dr. Jasmine Carter. The entire ballroom stood up, giving her a prolonged standing ovation. Jasmine stood up gracefully, shared a quick, warm embrace with her father, Arthur, and then turned to Ethan. Ethan kissed her cheek gently before she walked up to the stage to receive the golden medal. Jasmine took the microphone, looking out at the world. 5 years ago, someone told me that science was just lines of code and silicon, and that a woman in a lab coat had no real value in the real world, Jasmine said, her voice clear, calm, and resonant. Today, I stand here to prove that truth, innovation, and self-worth can never be silenced by arrogance. In his filthy room, Julian choked back a sob, tears streaming down his hollow cheeks. He remembered saying those exact words to her in his office on their anniversary. Every word she spoke now felt like a dagger driving straight into his heart. As the applause peaked, Ethan walked up onto the main stage, holding a microphone of his own. The host stepped aside with a knowing smile. The crowd quieted down, curious. Ethan stood in front of Jasmine, looking directly into her eyes. Dr. Carter. Jasmine. For years ago, I watched you give everything to someone who never deserved a second of your time. I swore to myself that if I ever got the chance, I would give you the world. The entire global audience held its breath. Ethan slowly dropped to one knee on the stage. He opened a black velvet box, revealing a massive, flawless blue diamond ring that sparkled under the stage lights. Tonight, in front of the entire world, I'm asking you to share your life with me, Ethan said, his voice filled with deep, unwavering sincerity. I have already transferred 50% of Rothschild Capital's private equity into a global research foundation under your name, the Jasmine Carter Foundation for Scientific Innovation. Will you marry me? A collective gasp swept through the ballroom, followed by wild cheers from the audience. Jasmine looked down at Ethan, her eyes shining with genuine happiness. She didn't hesitate for a single second. Yes, Jasmine said softly into her microphone. Yes, Ethan. I will. Ethan stood up, slipped the ring onto her finger, pulled her close by the waist, and kissed her deeply as golden confetti rained down from the ceiling. In the dingy apartment, Julian dropped his beer can, the glass shattering against the floor. He stumbled out into the cold night air, wandering the streets like a ghost. He stopped in front of Times Square, looking up at a massive, 100-foot digital billboard. Above the bustling city crowd, the high-definition screen showed Jasmine and Ethan embraced in a loving kiss, surrounded by global glory and unconditional love. Julian collapsed onto his knees on the wet sidewalk, crying hysterically as passers-by walked right past him without a second glance. He was completely invisible, ruined, and forgotten. High above the noise of the world, Jasmine stepped off the stage hand in hand with Ethan, leaving the shadows of her past behind forever as she walked into a bright, boundless future.